Other interesting political news, you have GM executives punching back, as you have executive Mark Rouse writing an article on the UAW and their misinformation. Now, this is from him. He actually wrote something in the Detroit Free Press, which I can't believe Detroit still has newspapers? Or they still have people living there? I was shocked. I'm only partially kidding. My family came from up north. And Detroit at one time, as crazy as this sounds, used to be one of the richest cities. No, it was the richest city on the planet at one time, which is astronomically impressive. But it was also when there was really no competition in the automotive community, and the big three were juggernauts. But times and culture have changed dramatically since then. Now, he wrote this a couple days ago, and I'll go ahead and I'll read it. And we'll see. And let me know in the comments, do you think this is misinformation or not as we go through it? Love to hear your perspective. Now, he says, quote, amid the rhetoric of the United Auto Worker leadership, the flow of information is not fair to anyone. It can be hugely counterproductive to reach an agreement that gets GM back to work quickly, which should be everyone's goal, unquote. I don't think that's their goal, personally. And the next paragraph, next quote, the record offer we proposed September 14th recognizes the many contributions our representative team members made to our company, past, present, and future, and it addresses directly what they've told us matters most: wage growth, job security, and long-term stability. I'd like to take this opportunity to debunk some of the myths being shared out there, unquote. Now, my fun commentary on this paragraph, it doesn't sound like they addressed job security, wage growth. They didn't address the benefits for doing nothing, like the retirement benefits and the pensions. Well, pensions, you would argue you do work to get that, but it's one of those things where there are some sticking points that the UAW really wants, which ironically they had to give up in 2009 when they nearly bankrupt Ford. Partially the reason, not the whole reason. I know the economy was a thing, obviously. And it was a contributing factor to why GM and Chrysler went bankrupt. And that's why they gave them up at the time, because the companies couldn't afford it. And GM is still in debt somehow, still. I guess it shouldn't be too surprising. Now, going on to his first paragraph, which says, quote, myth, GM doesn't pay people a good wage, unquote. Paragraph starts, quote, UAW leadership claims GM pays its members poverty wages. This is simply not true. In our current proposal, we are offering a 20% wage increase, including for temporary employees, who make up only 6 to 10% of our workforce. That means approximately 85% of current represented employees would earn a base wage of approximately $82,000 per year. In contrast, the average median household income in the 9 areas where GM has major assembly plants is $51,821. And total compensation for the 85% of the workforce with overtime and benefits would be $150,000 per year. In the 2019 contract, wages for hourly workers with less than 1 year of service earning $17 an hour had the potential to reach $32.32 an hour over the term of the contract. With our most recent proposal, some entry-level team members would get up to a maximum rate of $39.24 an hour at the end of the contract. For some workers, a 141% increase, unquote. So that was a lot of data right there. $82,000 a year, that's a lot of money. Granted, I know it's somewhat relative geographically. If you're in Los Angeles or Beverly Hills, that's not enough for a shoebox, but that's not where they put factories. I was about to say obviously, but I don't know who's tuning in, because it's so prohibitively expensive to be there. Now, saying up to $150,000 per year, and I know that includes benefits, but that's also what shareholders and consumers care about in terms of the total costs for these particular benefits. That's costing real money. That's what's increasing the price of their vehicles for the 18 people who still buy them. Kidding, that was kind of a joke. I know they have 23 customers in line. It still breaks my heart they killed the Corvette by taking away the stick shift, I'm not going to lie. But nevertheless, they still make some great, reliable V8s. I would say, in terms of getting a technology down pat, they have some great V8s. Unfortunately, they're only reinvesting $920 million into that for the new design, for the new updated one, while putting billions into EVs. Again, it's like roulette, putting all on 17 blue. Well, shows how much a gamble. 17 red or whatever. They're risking it all on the EVs. Now, let me know in the comments, do those wages sound accurate for if you're part of the UAW, do those wages sound accurate? And do the increases seem reasonable? And when we say 20% wage increase for the people who aren't following the contract too much or negotiation, that is 20% over the course of the 4-year contract, so 20% total, which is still astronomically great. I wish, when I worked at corporate America, I wish I can get that much of a raise. My God. But going on to the next paragraph. Quote, myth, with its record profits, GM could easily afford the UAW's demands. Unquote. So that was the headline. Now the body. Appropriate metaphor or term perhaps for the automotive article. Quote, the fundamental reality is that the UAW demands can be described in one word, untenable. We want to ensure our company succeeds and, more importantly, wins for the next 100 years for a benefit of everyone. We're at a pivotal point in our journey as we transition to an all-EV future. We have already announced our intention to add jobs in 2024. In our offer, we have work and products for every single one of our U.S. factories. As we start our transformation to EVs, we've made sure we had work for the entire manufacturing team so we could bring everyone along with our transformation, unquote. Yeah, I couldn't help but laugh. Now, in terms of historicals of General Motors specifically, that's throughout the decades I've been following the companies and my family's been part of it. It's one of the things where I just know that company the most. That's why I have the most reference points with that one. And it's the one I've written the most papers about. Now, with GM, ever since Billy Durant, he's the brainchild, actually founded the company when he combined good old Buick and Oldsmobile way back in the day. I kind of laughed when they said, oh yeah, stable for the next 100 years. They've gone bankrupt like 3 times, I believe now, because Billy Durant, he founded the company, bringing together Oldsmobile and Buick. They went bankrupt, unfortunately, due to, I believe, the Great Depression. They went bankrupt, but Billy Durant was a very persistent man. He was working, he found a little race car driver, a little Frenchman named Louis Chevrolet, and they decided to team up and start making consumer cars. And before you know it, he grew Chevrolet so big, he bought GM back from the banks, thereby bringing Chevrolet into the Oldsmobile and Buick product line. And then he built it up again, and unfortunately, I believe they went bankrupt again, and he kind of died sad and working in a bowling alley. But the company's gone bankrupt multiple times, which is why I couldn't help but laugh when he said stability for 100 years. The historics on GM in terms of will they go bankrupt again the odds are pretty darn good. And again, they still have debt. A lot of people aren't talking about that. Now, I believe he's accurate in terms of the pivotal point in our transition to going to EVs. Now, again, when it comes to all this, data is key. I wish he actually used the specific profit points and the figures and say how much it would cost to revamp a factory and how much they're going to. I don't think anyone wants to say the quiet words out loud, but heck, I don't work there. I don't care. I'll say it. They're going to have to pay a lot of money for engineers. They're going to need a lot of computer science degrees. They're going to need a lot of those folks. Because again, an EV is basically a computer on wheels. So software development is going to be huge. And no one wants to hear that because they're going to be paid an appropriate market rate for that job, which means they're going to get paid more than UAW. Now, it'd be interesting if the UAW were to rework their employees and have, because I know they have some in like not just the factories, there are some in the management buildings as well. That'd be interesting to see. Would they retrain the employees for that? And I don't know if that'd be a pejorative suggestion. I wouldn't think so, but it'll be interesting. What are your thoughts on that paragraph? I mean, again, $80 billion over a 4-year contract. Yeah, it certainly seems. And again, they already have the highest wages in the industry. So I think that's fairly accurate in terms of, I think it would probably cripple them. Moving on to the next paragraph. Quote, myth, those record profits go forward fueling corporate greed, unquote. He continues saying, quote, those record profits are reinvested in the company and our people. In 2022, GM had a net income profits of $9.9 billion. In 2023, our capital spending will be $11 to $12 billion. That is not an aberration over the past 10 years. Our net income totaled $65 billion, and the amount we've invested in the same period is $77 billion. That includes investments in EV Future, including our vehicle facilities in Detroit, Hamrock, and Orion, Michigan, Toledo and Defiance in Ohio, and in Rochester, New York. It also includes significant investment for future internal combustion products in Flint, Michigan, Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Arlington, Texas. The reality is that our business is capital intensive, and the auto company that doesn't invest in its own future gets left behind, unquote. Now, I was going to say, they should be investing more into the amount of resource allocation. When you look at how much they're putting into EVs and how little they're putting into V8s. I mean, again, right now, the same thing with Ford. A majority of their profits are coming from the V8s. They're coming from the internal combustion engine. That's how they're fueling this transformation. In addition to taking out debt and loans. As Ford just took out a loan, I believe, for a couple $1 billion to build battery factories. So, yeah, it definitely sounds like the numbers. I'm surprised more investors aren't scared. Oh yeah, you spent $65 billion, or no, you took in $65 billion over that time period. You're spending $77. Doesn't sound like the greatest business model. Now he continues the paragraph actually by saying, quote, "If we don't continue to invest, we will lose ground quickly. Our competitors around the country and around the world, most of whom are non-union, will waste no time seizing the opportunity we would be handing them," unquote. I'll let everyone pause for a little laugh right here. Lose ground. I mean, Tesla is so far ahead, not just of GM, but of every automotive company. They're an industry leader for EVs. That's what they do. It's their core competency. They're already I think that's one of the reasons Mary Barra is trying to cut so much cost, because they're so far behind in the race. They need to run like hell, work 105 hours a week if they really want to catch up realistically to Tesla. Which, again, I don't know if it's a proven business idea. Time will determine who's right. Let me know in the comments, do those figures sound accurate? And do you think they should continue to reinvest a majority of their profits into the EVs? Interestingly enough, some of the comments on the YouTube when we come about this topic, many people are saying they should reinvest more profits into the people, which is perhaps part of the debate here we have today when it comes to the upcoming contract. But again, let me know, do you think would doing that help push the company forward? Would it make the company more profitable? Would it make the products better? How would that impact the whole ecosystem of everyone affected by automotives? Again, most Americans can't even afford a new car these days. I believe the average new car price is like 50 something grand. And unfortunately, because of the U.S. government killing internal combustion engines, the number of entry-level cheap vehicles is dwindling every year. People always talk pejoratively about the Mitsubishi Mirage because it is kind of comical in terms of the low-quality parts, but in terms of an ROI, and if you're lower income and you need a vehicle to get to work, it's a great value. For under 20 grand, getting a new car with a warranty and an internal combustion engine gets 40 plus miles per gallon. That's great. But unfortunately, the government's trying to kill all that. So the average used car price, or new car price, is just going to increase exponentially, ironically hurting the people that the government purports to love about helping the most. But I only partially digress. He continues. Another quote, "Myth, GM doesn't provide significant paid time off for its employees," unquote. His paragraph says, quote, "We currently offer 16 to 19 paid holidays per year and have offered the addition of Juneteenth. Paid holidays can vary due on the election year and where the Christmas holiday falls. Roughly 80% of representative team members, with the exception of temporary employees and new hires, receive 3 to 5 weeks of vacation based on seniority. New hires receive 1 week of vacation in their first year, 2 weeks in their second year," unquote. That's a lot of vacation. And granted, I'm biased. I own a small business. I work 105 hours a week. But gosh, that's a lot of vacation. Let me know. Do you think is that not already enough? That's 16 to 19 paid holidays and up to 5 weeks vacation? Jesus. Now, to me, that's a lot. I haven't taken vacation in years. But that's just me. Let me know in the comments. Next note, quote, "GM isn't addressing tiers," unquote. The paragraph goes on to say, quote, "GM offers include annual wage increases for new employees with progression to the full wage rate within 4 years. We have assembly and manufacturing jobs, we have warehousing jobs, and we have supply jobs. Within these distinctly different businesses in our national contract, everyone is paid the same wage structure," unquote. Which again, it does, I don't know, in terms of, free market capitalism, just, I don't feel like all those jobs are equal in terms of I think some of those jobs should definitely get paid more than others. I mean, my grandpa worked in an aluminum foundry in Michigan. You work in a factory where it gets hotter than hell. I mean, I would argue that is worth more than, again, not to pejoratively speak about these other roles, but if you're in an air-conditioned room, like a supply job, so you're working without parts, I mean, let me know, does it sound like everyone in every one of these capacities should get paid the same starting out? I don't know. I don't think that's a great take, but no, that's just me. Next paragraph, quote, myth, GM employees lack retirement security, unquote. He continues to say, quote, our representative team receives extremely generous retirement benefits. Our last offer to the UAW continues our unconditional 6.4% company 401k contribution for employees who are not eligible for pensions. An additional $2,600 contribution each year is provided in an investment toward medical expenses in retirement, a 25% increase over today. Those retirement benefits could grow to $1.7 million over the typical 33-year career when combined with our average employee contributions and historical investment returns in our plans, unquote. Now, there should also be a caveat because within 33 years, they're probably going to go bankrupt again. Perhaps, I would say the main causes are going to be increased wages by the UAW and making EVs that aren't competitive. That's my guess today. Granted, it's a very fluid situation. 6.4% matching 401k, that's ridiculously generous. Back even when I worked at a tech company, I believe they matched 1.9%. Like, that's really good. Let me know, what's your industry, if you're not in the automotive, or what other industries do you think have 6.4% 401k contribution? That's a lot. Now, last paragraph by Mr. Mike Rouse, saying, quote, the importance of moving forward, unquote. He says, quote, as the past has clearly shown, nobody wins in a strike. We have delivered a record offer. That is a fact. It rightly rewards our team members while positioning the company for success in the future. Often in these situations, the clouds of rhetoric can obscure reality. I'm hoping to shed some light and clarity on this whole situation, one that I sincerely hope can be resolved quickly and fairly. That is what our team members, our communities, and our customers and our country all deserve, unquote. Signed, Mark Rouse, president of General Motors. And of course, there are the comments section, thankfully, which I would argue is probably one of those biggest value adds. If you do have a blog or YouTube videos or anything like that, that's usually where you have the most fun because that's where you like to learn about other people's perspective. Which is why I always keep my comments open. The UAW, more often than not, does not, but that's just me. Now, from all that we've spoken about, do you think, based on what his input is, are the things the UAW is saying misinformation? Do you think there's just a disconnect between both sides? What points do you think he has brought up are the most accurate or the most concerning for GM to survive long term? It's one of those things where I think a couple of his points were on point, pun moderately intended, and he's saying, it is interesting to see, he says in a strike no one wins. In my opinion, they're going to acquiesce because they're cowards. They're going to acquiesce and give the UAW a lot, in which case the UAW would win and GM would be further inhibited from making greater investments in the company and their transformation. It might slow it down, it might even destroy it, depending on the severity of how much they give in. This is also, they have Biden in the White House. So he might come in and help them out. Historically speaking, from a political perspective, he advertises himself as a very pro-union political person. So he might, kind of like with the railroad, we had that strike with their union, I believe it was a couple of fiscal quarters ago, and he came in and just knocked them down. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes in that perspective. But on to the comments section from this news article. And I suspect though most people don't have the mindset of, how much is the car going to cost when they buy it? How's it going to affect consumers? How's it going to invest grandma who's invested in the company with her 401k that invests in General Motors stock? But I just guessing that most of the comments are going to be pejorative towards him. But let's dive in. let's see. And unfortunately, like most of Detroit, the comment section is rudimentary to say the least. There's not a lot of like thumbs up. Respect? What? No, there is that a counter? It looks like there is a rudimentary counter. All right. But not a lot of traffic. All right, let's just dive in. Someone by the name of Carl J says, quote, I believe Rouse could be correct. GM loves to play lots of, quote, creative counting shell game to look at profitability and satisfying shareholders. Even though GM is showing huge profits, the actual picture might be totally different, unquote. Someone by the name of Randy D said, quote, the UAW's demand of a 32-hour work week is offensive to me, and I'm a UAW retiree. If I could work a 60-hour week, so can you, unquote. Someone responded to him, actually Carl J again, saying, quote, agree, back in the day, if you're told you're working 6 to 7 days a week, you just did it, no questions asked, unquote. I think that's also part of a cultural transition we see in the United States as more and more people acquiesce in responsibility and going above and beyond. Most people, especially when you see the trends when people are just crying just because they have to work 8 hours, mentally and physically Americans are quite weak these days, unfortunately, to say the least. Now, it looks like someone by the name of James N said, quote, if the UAW and auto corporations believe they're going to pass along the costs of settlements, they are making a huge mistake. New vehicle prices are already through the roof, and like myself, folks are going to be driving their vehicles for many years. Hope they are realizing this, unquote. Which, if you're in terms of ROI for personal financing advice, which I should clarify, I don't give financial advice. I'm not telling you what stocks to buy or not. If you look at the best way to get money out of a vehicle, like to actually get the value of it, you drive it until the wheels fall off, basically. It's not glamorous because you're not as cool with like Johnny down the street, you got a new car or something, but it is best for your pocketbook more often than not. Trying to find a couple more comments here. Let's see. Some by Clayton I saying, quote, Mr. Rouse and Miss Barra, CEO, are aware of the competition and have looked at the cliff coming up and still have offered a 20% raise. Keep up the entire team and promise to keep all the plants open. I'm not a negotiator or UAW member, but it sounds attractive to me, and I'm sure a lot of folks relying on GM paycheck agree too. Interestingly enough, someone responded to that person saying, this so-called this is a separate comment. Not the best interface. It says, so a comment to a comment. We got some conversations going here. So Mr. School the World said, quote, this so-called misinformation, I haven't heard any of it, weird. Someone responded to this person by the name of Matt S. saying, you haven't been following Fein and the UAW's false narrative, unquote. So interestingly enough, someone by the name of Rick R. said, base pay of $82,000 per year, that's hardly poverty wages. How entitled is that guy? $82,000? He thinks that's poverty? Another thing Americans have never really seen true poverty, most of them, or true hunger. The sense of entitlement in the United States is getting ridiculous, I would say. Like, the amount of people who have faced true hardship, needless to say, they have not. And I would say some people should, I would say most people should, because it builds character needed to grow and develop. But that's just my 3 cents. Let's see here. Another one saying, Common R saying, all EV future. We'll see about that. So interestingly enough, I thought they were going to be all pejorative. It seems about maybe 60-40, 50-50 between positive to the GM president and negative to him. Now, let me know in the comments. Very interesting political move. And again, the GM and the United Auto Workers, United Auto Workers contribute so much to political campaigns. They're basically a political movement in and of itself. Well, second only to perhaps the teachers' unions. But when it comes to moves on the political chessboard, you finally have someone from GM sounding off like they have a pair and saying, this is our perspective. Here are the things we think are being misrepresented. Here's what we're offering. He's the president. But then you have Mary Barra over here. She's the CEO. And interestingly enough, maybe he's playing a game of politics, a good guy, bad guy kind of thing. Might that be their approach, perhaps? It'll be interesting to see. Maybe that's a negotiation tactic. And I can't help but imagine what all the shareholders are doing. I can only imagine they're calling up Mary Barra and sending letters to all the companies saying, for the love of God, do not increase too much because we're going to go bankrupt again. And their shares will be worth nothing. Or you're already more expensive than Tesla. What on earth are you doing? But it'll be interesting to see. Let me know in the comments. What are your thoughts on his article? Do you think his statements were accurate in calling out misinformation? Was it misinformation in and of itself? A wise man once said, usually the truth lies somewhere in between. Based on the statements he was making and what I've seen thus far in the conversation and with the negotiations going back and forth, I venture to think he's on point more often than not. But that's just my 3 cents. It used to be 2 cents, but 40-year hyperinflation, gotta charge 3. Should really charge 4. But I'm a generous man, though it is still free to click the subscribe button. Thank you again for taking the time to tune in. Again, I know it's ambitious, but we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of September. So if you could click that subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, all of the comments help the channel grow and develop, and the feedback is much appreciated, whether it's critiquing how I can improve my speaking abilities, or it's suggesting new software where we can do picture-in-picture in real-time production, so we could incorporate some of these clips into the production of the show as well. All the feedback is greatly appreciated. And of course, leaving a like also helps with the algorithm and gets more people to tune into the show, and it helps out as well. Also, and lastly, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.